welcome to the SPRTER Podcast, Darius Willis.
Hey, Tilo, thanks for having me. How you doing?
I am fantastic. How are you doing?
All right, just getting ready for a little dinner. Try to get a little dinner in before the meeting.
Great. I know it's already late for you in Switzerland, so thanks for making time post-dinner. And we're excited to chat all things college football and entrepreneurship. So a lot of things happening, particularly with recruitment lately. So super pumped for this session.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So let me introduce you to our audience. So Darius Willis, a former Indiana football player, who earned an All Big Ten freshman team honors in 2009. And after the career at Indiana, you moved to Switzerland, became a coach, coached the Bern Grizzlies football team, and also really figured that you have way too much time at your hand, so you became an entrepreneur and making some waves in the business side of the sports industry.
Yes.
So all of that is what we're going to chat about today, particularly with the Willis Sport organizations. We're going to see what you got cooking there, and let me welcome you to the show and get started with how did it all begin? How does your career start? And take me back all the way to the beginning.
From in terms of the sports and coming to Switzerland, or in terms of the entrepreneurship?
Let's start all the way back. How did you start playing sport? How does it come to become? How did it start with playing football, and what's your way into college?
Yeah, I started playing football, I would say, at the age roughly around 5 or 6 years old. It was a sport that, for me, I loved the contact of it as a kid, and also to watch some of the best athletes at that time. I was actually a 5-sport athlete, but I chose to stick with football. For that was where I had the most success as a kid, and that's where my heart was and passion. In the 2nd grade, actually, was my decision to say, hey, I want to pursue a career in the NFL. And so I worked from then on to get that NFL opportunity. I had a lot of scholarship opportunities in high school. I actually attended 2 different high schools, and I had a lot of scholarships, and I chose to stay close to home, so family and friends can come see me in Indiana. And it was a great choice, great university. Unfortunately, I had a lot of injuries, so that didn't help that process at all. But football was always my number one as a kid.
Yeah, 2nd grade, that's so early on making that decision, and then actually following through with going all the way to Indiana, which is a really good program. So how did it start? How did you get recruited to Indiana? Why? You just mentioned friends and family, but what's the recruitment back then, and how do you think name, image, and likeness now would change that recruitment for you?
Oof. That's a good one. I would say recruiting for me back then, I honestly didn't know where I wanted to go, and necessarily if I wanted to go to college. That process was all new to me as a freshman in high school. I was taking visits to Tennessee, getting recruited by Indiana, going to Kentucky, Illinois, as a freshman, because at that time I was really big in track and field. But the recruiting at that stage, I didn't even know if I wanted to go to college. I had no idea. And I think that as I got into more in my sophomore year, I started to focus and see that vision of choosing a school to ultimately lead me to where I want to ultimately go is in the NFL. But the recruiting process, it was different then because I didn't attend camps. Like nowadays, so many kids attend so many camps. I did not attend camps, and I say for the reason, 1, my grades were good, and 2, I produced and had good film. So for me, I didn't want to waste the time and the money and the extra trips to go to camps at that time. And so I just focused on the sport, and that actually helped me. I took so many visits as a freshman, sophomore, and a junior. I mean, I traveled so many places every single weekend, seeing all the different schools and meeting all the coaches. And I mean, there would be, say on Monday, there would be 100 letters in my mailbox. My mom and I would just go through and laugh and read them together and see what all the coaches have to say. And many coaches would come visit the school. I can frankly remember one visit. I was actually at track practice, and at least 5 coaches from Penn State came, and it was actually a bad day for me. I was throwing up because it was a hard workout, and I was puking, and I could just see the coaches, 5 Penn State coaches, just looking at me like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Okay." But that was actually a good, funny experience. I mean, there was always coaches around at our high school, and talking to my high school head coach, Coach Shive. So it was a cool process, but a lot of stressful with all the travel.
No, I can see that. And would you now, with the recent changes in name, image, and likeness, where athletes are able to monetize that as part of their college career, would you have made the same choice? Would you have made a different choice?
That's tough to say. I would say it definitely would have factored into a lot of my decisions. My ultimate goal was to get to a college, get a degree, and then go to the NFL. So that process wouldn't have changed for me, that thought mindset. But to add that name, image, and likeness in is huge. I can say for all the time I had to spend for interviews or a commercial or to lead class, to do something for the university, for the sport. The name, image, and likeness would have impacted me so much differently in college, especially as coming from a low income family. That's definitely important, and you see that trend now with so many athletes deciding to even quit forego their senior season to just go ahead and prepare for college. I mean, for me, I would not do that. I would definitely enjoy my senior season, live out and enjoy those memories forever. But the name, image, and likeness for monetizing that is huge. I definitely would have seen actually my entrepreneurial career starting sooner because that's definitely beneficial for the kids. And now as they start in that process soon, but it's an interesting topic. But I would probably still chosen Indiana, but it would have definitely been some added benefits with that name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, I've been saying that for a while now, that I think particularly athletes from low-income communities, families it makes the biggest difference on them in terms of actually staying in school. So I can absolutely see that. Now, you mentioned that this would have started your entrepreneurial career quite a bit earlier, which I can absolutely see. You have the type of mindset for it. We're going to get into that in a second. But you transition out of college and into coaching. So you mentioned coaches have been visiting and they've been writing, and then you're like, well, actually, I should be one of them. What was that decision-making process in terms of transitioning into coaching and moving overseas?
Yeah, for me, I've always been about giving back and enjoying the times when we have to coach the youth, when we have to go to the youth events, or even my teammates, helping them extra and after practice or at nighttime and things like that. For me, coaching was always a part of me, just because I love to help and give back. But then I had a conversation with a few coaches. And then actually, too, when I had my short NFL experience with the New York Jets, Coach Anthony Lynn, he was like, I think maybe you should get into coaching. And then him saying that to me, and then a couple of my high school coaches talking to me about it, it was something that was on my mind. I know I still wanted to play at the same time, but I think coaching for me the role fit perfectly because one, I love to recruit. I love to talk. I like to make connections and network. So that part, it became so easy for me to interact with all the different types of players and backgrounds. That's definitely important for a coach to have. And then to come to Switzerland, I came to play, but then once I saw how the setup was, you ultimately get forced into coaching right away. So I had coached previously at my high school, my alma mater, in Franklin Central, and then that kind of to get ready for when I made that transition fully here in Switzerland. I wanted to kind of build a program, build that structure, because internationally it's much different process, and I wanted to bring kind of that same discipline and structure that I learned that from so many coaches and people, what I've seen, what I've been around, and instill that here in Switzerland.
And that's an interesting point that you're making here in terms of that difference. Walk me through that difference. How is it? Obviously, the NFL is the pinnacle of football, but some of the colleges in the US are super professionalized. So, when you came to Switzerland, what did you find?
Very unorganized, very old-fashioned. There's not the structure is not. There's no togetherness. And if you want to be successful, and especially as an organization, whether you're a coaching staff or not, but as an organization, you need that together. You have to get along, communicate, and have a vision for the future because you have to lead so many different factors of that organization, especially most importantly the players. And that was so different for me because in high school all that stuff is there for you. There's so many staff members. The players are into it 100%. In practice, of course, if you miss practice in America, you're cut from the team. Here, guys will miss and just show up on game day. And I want to change that culture because it's not right. And instill that and see that discipline of how it really takes if you want to be the best, especially internationally.
I can absolutely see that. I mean, that was part of my soccer playing where I sometimes like, I'm going to go surf now, and then I still expected to play. It's certainly wrong mindset, but hey, when you're young, that's what you do. So, who are some of the role models for you playing as well as for coaching?
That's a good one. I would say it always goes back to my coaches. I would say, I put it this way, my coaches, I say my role model or person that led me to do the international experience was one of my teammates from college. Was Jamie Curlew. He was also a former NFL player, now living in China. But he was the guy that told me about the international experience because he had a year in Berlin where he played. But I would say it always came from my coaches, my role models. I mean, as a coach is a teacher, and that's the coaches spend more time around the kids than teachers do. So and I found myself grown always attached to the coaches, no matter who it was. I just always wanted to learn. They all have something to bring to the table. And Lance Scheib for me, Coach Mallory, Glenn Graves, those were my three top coaches from the high school and youth eras. And then Dennis Springer in college was another coach I looked up to, and Deland McCullough, who's the current running back coach at Indiana. Those anytime they would speak, I listened. and for me, it was that was huge. But Jamie Curlew was the one who got me to think internationally and take that opportunity to come here.
And it takes a special person to actually listen to the coach and wanting to get better all the time, and then also to make that leap, that international leap, because I mean Switzerland is amazing, it's a beautiful country, but it's very culturally different to what you've been experiencing in the United States as well. So that's pretty exciting. Now, last question before we get into entrepreneurial aspects is locker room banter. One or more of your favorite moments with your teammates. What memories come to mind?
With my teammates. Okay, that's a clear one for me. It's a little touchy, it's a little sad, but it's a clear one for me. I would say I had transferred my sophomore year to a new high school. And at that time, we were dealing with the loss of my brother. I was in a completely new school, new team, and the coach canceled. We were in camp at that time, I remember. The coach canceled practice and had the entire team and staff attend my brother's funeral. For me, that is one of the best. That is my best ultimate football moment because that day I had lost a brother, but I had gained over 100, and that was clear my best moment.
I am very sorry about the loss. And yeah, you were absolutely right. I'm already tearing up here a little bit.
No,
I
dude.
mean, that is very special. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is not much banter, but it's very heartfelt. It's
Yeah.
impressive. Wow. Hard to transition from that. I can I can tell you that.
Sorry about that. We had a lot of locker room fun and everything. It's fun on and off the field, the stuff to the bus. But I would say for me, my ultimate football moment, my entire career, was that moment.
No, I can absolutely see that. Yeah. Now, football, you're still engaged in the sport, but you have really transitioned to become an entrepreneur. You are really on the other side of recruitment right now, right? So you've
Yeah.
been pursued, you've been recruited. You have started the Willis Sport Organization. Tell me a little bit about what the Willis Sport Organization is, what you do, and how you impact the lives of so many athletes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got into the entrepreneurial role early. I thought about it, but then I fully made that transition once I quit my job here, and it was clear for me. It was where I got to combine all my hobbies into one. And so Willis Sports Organization is data training and events. And so we are analytical platform, data and recruiting analytics platform that exposes athletes to coaches, colleges, and professional teams. And of course, through the training and events as the other two criteria. What we do is it's very broad, but the key centered part of it is the data side. And so we want to help as many athletes have that opportunity around the world to be seen, to have that platform, to have the coaches right in front. And so with this intelligent platform and how we do it, by combining those elements, now coaches are able to see athletes from all sports from around the world. And that is a huge important factor because coming here, I learned right away of the difference in how hard it is for these athletes to be seen and the resources that they lack compared to how our structure is in America. So that is very important for me. And here we're just getting started. We're still a very early stage startup, but that's what we're doing around the world for the athletes.
And that's really interesting to hear you say the role of data. Can you elaborate a little bit of the availability of data, how that impacts the sport industry in general, and how it makes a difference for Willis Sport Organization?
Yes, sports analytics. I mean, the market is continuing to growing, and so when we're talking about sports analytics, it's the analysis. Okay, we're drawing analysis of the player performance, team performance, media, things like that, and we're breaking it down into a more understandable, user-friendly way. So that in terms of, say, an athlete's height and weight, we can use so many different testing and algorithms to create for each sport and showcase this to the coaches, and so they're easy to find athletes comparable to athletes on the roster or athletes that they had before. And so analytics is a growing vast market, and of course many people can refer to the Moneyball film, which is definitely great. I think that movie relates to many people in terms of sports analytics, and data is a huge part and component of our company, and we're the first in Switzerland to include data and recruiting analytics. We're the only one, and Switzerland is #1 in innovation, but we are the first to do this.
That's amazing. And you're focused on football, I would assume, right? You're as a football player, and what's the growth? What are you pushing into other sports? Tell me more.
So yes, we will do all sports. So that's the special. What's special about us is we're not going to be focused on one sport, because as our base is, we want to help as many athletes as possible, which in turn helps as many coaches as possible to see all these athletes. And so we start with football, American football, I have to say it that way,
Yeah.
and then we get into the other sports of soccer, basketball, and so forth. So our platform will have collegiate and professional sports. And of course, we have what we call emerging sports. So women's flag football, women's wrestling, handball, rugby. These are what we consider emerging sports because they're not as popular, but they're growing hugely around the world.
I can absolutely see that. Now, say I'm a coach, I coach for Indiana University, right? That's where the best football players go. And I go on your platform and I look for some talent, and I realized that, hey, there is this awesome player based in Switzerland that has all of the stats. So I can recruit them through Willis Sport, is that right?
Yes. So coaches can subscribe. So we break it down subscription packages per level. So JUCO, the NAIA, and the NCAA, and then of course the NCAA in terms of football, you have to get more specific because of the FCS and FBS. So those are different recruiting packages that we'll showcase to those coaches. And say we'll have, say, 10 members from the coaching staff can log on to the platform and start recruiting athletes, whether in Switzerland, if they find key athletes, or whatever country that they have in mind.
That's amazing. And we always talk about that athlete mindset when we think about entrepreneurship. Now, how does your experience as an athlete and the attitude that you learn through the teamwork, all of the training, etc., how's that translating into the business world?
Ooh, I would say one thing: competitive. Competitive nature, always being hungry, always wanting to be first. I'd say all that carries over. The discipline, the hard work, the time management skills trends over. But I would say the competitive nature, especially in the sports industry. I mean, how many companies around the world, whether it's data or just anything, you got to have that competitive nature. And that's one thing that's carried over for me and getting this type of business model. And especially being an international company, I don't want to just be local. I want to go after the top dogs and say, hey, we're here to stay and we're here to take over. So that competitive nature carried over a lot for me.
I can absolutely see that. And that's something that I see with a lot of athletes that are starting companies. They're like, I'm going to make it. Even if the first month or the first year or the first 2 years you're failing, you're like, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to make it.
Yes.
So that's pretty exciting. And obviously you have sounds like an amazing idea of the future as well, how you're going to grow. So that's exciting. I can tell you that this is the type of platform that is absolutely needed, those type of platforms in terms of recruitment. And it's awesome that you're supporting athletes through that.
Yeah, thank you.
And you're based in Switzerland, but you are also mentioned that you are looking to have athletes from around the world. So where's the next growth coming from? Are you staying in the German-speaking countries in that, or Central Europe, or where you're pushing into?
I don't know if I could say that, but no, I would say we target athletes from all over the place, every country. We're more centralized here in Europe, learning, and we have outsourcing teams that look into countries outside of Europe. Of course, I know the American structure, and of course with the partners and things like that, we can cover a lot of America. That's a little more easy, but tapping into Europe and a few other countries is important because we want to go to where we know that there's athletes are, and these areas that need these resources, that need these type of platforms, that need that opportunity to showcase where the resources are lacking. So these are a lot of these smaller countries that we're looking into right now.
That's awesome. And one thing that I see here, as in one thing I want to share with our audience as well, is that you have your experience store set up on the SPRTER app, where you provide experiences to those who want to gain some insights on the football, or any sort of virtual training on your experience store. But it's also something that those who are interested in learning more about entrepreneurship and transitioning from there. So there's a lot of options to do one-on-ones with you and pick your brain and learn from you, whether it's on the field or off the field. So that's something for all of our audience here. Make sure to check out Darius's Experience Store on the SPRTER app as well.
Yes, hit me up. I'm ready.
And we have with SPRTER and Willis Sport, we've formed a partnership. That's also super excited about that, in terms of where we're sharing some knowledge. We're sharing the same vision as helping athletes on and off the field. I think that's exciting to work with partners that believe in the same thing, as in helping those athletes. So I'm super excited about that partnership as well.
I am as well. It's going to be a blast, especially as we get out of this COVID phase into next year a little bit.
Yes. So last question in terms of playing and in terms of coaching and recruitment. Where do you see the next 6 months to a year in the sport industry? Give me your glass ball.
Overall, you got to look at the technology, the innovation of sports technology. And the one thing that was great about COVID was this is the boom of innovation in sports technology. This was our era. This is the best time to create a startup and attack, and you will see so many new names that are going to take over quickly in the market. The sports industry is changing. I mean, the recruiting, the spending continues to increase. There's the countries or the areas of Asia and China are the most growing in terms of sports. You're going to see so much new trends, and especially now you have the NFTs that's changing it. The recruiting process with the NEAL is going to continue to revamp, and hopefully that come to a wake-up call by letting international athletes benefit off their name, image, and likeness. So hopefully that trend also will take place next year. But I think right now this is the best time to be involved in sports, in the sports industry, with so many new companies such as ours and others around the world with technology advances.
That's awesome. Yeah, I 100% agree. Technology, digitalization. If we can find something positive from COVID, that's it.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of the growth, in terms of name, image, and likeness, monetization, what you just mentioned in terms of internationals, I just heard of a company that provides scholarships for international students. Rather than paying them, but they provide now scholarships, which are possible. So that's one of the creative ways to get around that.
That is good. I mean, the scholarship is still money, and especially it's when you look at it as in that, to tap into that, international athletes are paying 3 times more American athletes for college education. So that free scholarship from that company is definitely beneficial.
And it's actually scholarships that can be used for living expenses. So it's not just, even if you're on full ride, you can still tap into that scholarship. So that's
good.
Where there's a will, there's a way to find a loophole.
Yes. There's some gray areas. The NCAA has to get it cleared out, but hopefully they get it together.
Yeah, I totally agree. No, those are all exciting opportunities happening in the sport industry. Willis Sport is obviously ready to disrupt the recruitment market. We're excited to see where you're taking it, and we're here to cheer. We're here to support, and with the SPRTER app and Willis Sport, we got an awesome partnership, and I think we're we're going to see and hear a lot more of you and Willis Sport moving forward. Thanks for joining our SPRTER podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope all the sporters and supporters had a good time enjoying the show, and I appreciate. Happy to come back, and we'll talk some more topics.
Oh, we'll definitely have you back for sure. Have an awesome evening, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.